The following is an address to the nation by Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Dr. the Right Honourable Keith Mitchell.
Fellow Grenadians, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to be the greatest challenge facing Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and many other countries around the world. However, with this unprecedented challenge comes opportunities for innovation and strategic thinking to restart our economies. It calls for all of us to have more patience, love, and tolerance in dealing with each other. In the midst of this pandemic, government must carefully balance competing priorities, ensuring that our healthcare system and workers are adequately prepared to deal with COVID-19, while at the same time easing into microeconomic framework that allows for more and more businesses to operate in keeping with the recommended protocols. As such, effective Monday, May the 11th, 2020, every day will be designated Business Day. That is, for the businesses already granted permission to operate and those to resume work soon. Approved businesses will operate their respective pre-COVID schedules within the allotted time, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The daily curfew remains in place from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. Government anticipates an uptick in economic activity with the resumption of work in the construction industry this week. Health and safety guidelines have been created, and the contractor for each project must seek and be granted permission from the construction subcommittee before actual work resumes. Other areas slated for reopening this week include real estate services, laundromats, landscapers and gardeners, flower shops, consumer credit stores, and companies offering payday loans. With many workers dependent on public transportation, government is working with stakeholders to develop appropriate social distancing and hygienic measures that will guide the resumption of this service. An official announcement will be made in the coming days. Limited ferry services have also been approved for reopening this week between mainland Grenada and Carriacou and Petit Martinique. We will continue to work closely with the service providers to ensure that operational guidelines are adhered to. As many await the reopening of our external borders, I hasten to say, while this is imminent, we are not there yet. Borders were closed to prevent the spread of the virus and to save lives. And for now, we must maintain that status quo. At the most recent emergency meeting of CARICOM heads, and OECS heads, we collectively agreed to start gradually relaxing the restrictions for travel, as the pandemic in the region has been largely contained. Governments, airlines, and the hotels are now finalizing the details of this phased reopening, assuming that the requisite protocols are in place. We therefore expect to open our borders in the first week of June. I assure you, fellow Grenadians, we'll not move unless we are satisfied that adequate health and safety guidelines are in place. This same rationale also influenced the decision to cancel Spice Mass 2020, because we simply cannot compromise the health, safety, and well-being of our people. This weekend, we witnessed the return of some of our nationals who are employed by the cruise ships. Sisters and brothers, fellow Grenadians, on one hand, we cannot deny the right of our citizens to return home. But on the other hand, our returning nationals must understand that in the midst of this health crisis, they can potentially spread the virus at home. Rest assured that the necessary health measures must be followed. The arriving nationals will be tested and transported directly to mandatory quarantine facilities. To provide further clarity on the mandatory quarantine for returning crew members, government is now single-handedly bearing the cost of almost $200,000 to provide these facilities, because the cruise industry have not accepted responsibility despite earlier agreements to do so. To those who remain stranded aboard ships and in other countries, we ask you to understand that in dealing with this health crisis, the actions of government must be guided by the capacity of our healthcare system to cope with any potential outbreak of this disease. We are open, of course, to receive stranded Grenadians as long as they have the means to find their way home, and bearing in mind our limited capacity to provide state quarantine facilities. All persons allowed to come in will be placed in mandatory quarantine at a designated facility for at least 2 weeks. I am pleased to announce that to date, sisters and brothers, we have no new confirmed cases of COVID-19. The results for all 84 PCR tests conducted on May 8 are negative for the virus. This includes the 64 people associated with a cluster detected at one place of business. Additionally, the final hospitalized case has been discharged, and the remaining 6 active cases are reported to be doing well. Sisters and brothers, our successful management of this healthcare crisis must go hand in hand with building the local economy. We have assembled, therefore, a task force of dedicated public and private sector officials to spearhead this effort. 7 cabinet-approved subcommittees have also been assigned responsibility for each of the productive sectors of our economy, namely Tourism and Citizenship by Investment Program, Construction, Private and Public, Education Services, St. George's University, Micro, Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, Agriculture and Fisheries, Wholesale and Retail Trade and Manufacturing sectors, e-commerce, digitization. They are reviewing the current situation in each sector and identifying priorities for phased implementation. Sisters and brothers, we are also buoyed by the fact that in the midst of this crisis, investor confidence remains high. The recent acquisition this week of Port Louis and Mount Cinnamon, with plans to add over 500 hotel rooms in an investment worth over $350 million US, speaks volumes for the recovery potential of our economy. It is important to note, sisters and brothers, that no concessions will be given until the developer is ready to begin construction of the 4 hotels. As we make future projections, sisters and brothers, critical actions are required now to bring relief to all our citizens. Cabinet has therefore approved in principle price support payments for nutmeg farmers. The terms and conditions which are being finalized with the Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association means that government is also awaiting an update from the Grenada Cocoa Association as to what assistance, if any, is required for those farmers. Government has also stepped in to lend support to poultry farmers, moving quickly to approve a trade license and waive the duties on 2 emergency shipments of feed, which became necessary after a shortage created by the mandatory closure of the main local supplier. These and other initiatives, sisters and brothers, are in addition to the economic stimulus package that I announced very early in our COVID-19 response effort. And they come at a time when government itself is dealing with the devastating impact of the pandemic. From projections of an 8 consecutive year of growth, government is now facing the stark reality of negative growth, triggered largely by the significant impact of tourism, construction, and education decline. This has resulted in a drastic decline in government revenue. In April, for example, the combined revenue collection by Customs and Inland Revenue divisions dropped by about $30 million compared to that of 2019, a decline likely to be replicated across our main revenue-generating departments over the next few months. Government is therefore utilizing its reserves and to seek also international help to finance any deficit and bring relief to its citizens, while continuing the fight against the deadly virus. Already, we have attracted funding from the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the European Union, the government of India and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and also Caribbean Development Bank, among others. We continue to look at other sources for grant and soft loan financing, as well as exploring options for debt relief. Notwithstanding, the team of the Ministry of Finance and the newly established COVID-19 Economic Support Secretariat, along with the relevant stakeholders, have been working diligently to fine-tune and implement the relief measures. We are still in the very early stages of the rollout, but to date, close to over 2,000 Grenadians have benefited from the payroll and income support initiatives. The application and verification process is ongoing and proven to be very time-consuming. However, staff members at the Secretariat are working day and night and on weekends to ensure that applications are duly processed and payments promptly made. Government is also considering expanding the categories of workers who are eligible for income support to bring greater relief to a wider cross-section of the population. Later this month, the National Insurance Scheme is expected to begin paying unemployment benefits to eligible persons. It is estimated that more than 5,000 persons will receive those benefits disbursed over the next 6 months. The suspension of the 2% increase in NIS payment is already in effect and will cover the period April to June 2020. The monthly advance installment and corporate income tax and installment payments on the annual stamp tax have been suspended to help businesses ease any cash flow problems during this period. We note, however, that some have opted to proceed with regular payments, and we give them high commendation. As promised, government has made additional funding available for disbursement through the existing small business lending facility at the Grenada Development Bank, GDB. The maximum threshold available under this fund has been increased to $40,000. Additionally, a reduced interest rate of 3% is being offered to people involved in agriculture, fisheries, and agro-processing. Electricity consumers will feel less of a pinch from this month as they start to benefit from the promised 30% reduction in bills given by government recently. Government is investing more than $7 million, but we are also grateful for the cooperation of Grenlec and WRB Enterprises, who are also contributing $3 million. These are the types of partnerships needed as we chart the way forward. Here too, I must publicly express government's gratitude to the St. George's University, which has been facilitating the PCR testing program. SGU, St. George's University, has also supplied a general hospital with portable X-ray unit, ventilators, cardiac monitors, sonogram units, and other medical equipment that will not only bolster our readiness in the fight against COVID-19, but better position the healthcare system to offer improved care to all our people. As for its own business operations, which represent over 20% of Grenada's GDP, SGU is also working closely with government on the appropriate time frame and methodology for getting students back to campus. Protocols are being developed for their re-entry. We are also grateful to other donors, including the government and people of Cuba, the People's Republic of China, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, or diplomatic representatives abroad, the Alibaba Group, the Canadian Banknote, the Pan American Health Organization, PAO, the National Lotteries Authority, Digicel, Flow, and all others who have assisted in bolstering our capacity to fight this dreaded disease. There are many other partners deserving of commendation. For example, the individuals and organizations that have been distributing food and other supplies for those in need. I personally thank and commend you for being your brother's keeper. Despite the generosity of so many, there appears to be a crisis developing within the COVID-19 crisis. Some people are feeling overwhelmed and hopeless as we endure the psychological and emotional toll of the pandemic. I assure you that there is hope. The Ministry of Social Development and Housing is leading the charge in providing counseling and helping people to develop stronger coping mechanisms. Church offices already are open to providing counseling services, and private individuals are also offering to provide psychological help to those in need. I thank those who are on the front line of the fight against COVID-19. We often see the doctors and the nurses, but today I also recognize all other staff in the healthcare system who have contributed in one way or another to this valiant effort. I call on all those who are not pulling their weight to do their fair share. I must thank, too, the COVID committee for their dedicated service in helping us to navigate through this entire crisis. Thanks also to our prison officers, our private security guards, our bus operators providing transportation for essential workers, our garbage collectors, our public servants, and all those who make daily sacrifices to help us through this special period. I thank you. The nation thanks you, and we appreciate you. The Commissioner of Police and most of his team have done an excellent job in maintaining law and order, and I commend them as well. In recent days, we have heard complaints in the public domain alleging abuse by police officers. Although to date, no formal complaints have been filed, but I'm assured by the Commissioner that the instances brought to his attention will be examined thoroughly. There is no excuse, sisters and brothers, for inappropriate action by police officers. Similarly, as citizens, we all have a responsibility to be guided by the law and to respect the enforcers of the law. I take this opportunity as well to strongly condemn and discourage the senseless acts of violence, domestic and child abuse, and other crimes that we commit against each other. Our new stressful environment is simply not an excuse for wrongdoing. Furthermore, to those who are using the restrictions imposed by the state of emergency to charge excessive prices for goods and services, I say to you, it is wrong and morally reprehensible. I have to ask all of you, all of those, where is your conscience? Especially in this terrible time. Our God will not let this behavior go unpunished. These actions will not be condoned, and the RGPF is empowered to take strong actions. Sisters and brothers, from all indications, we are successfully waging the war on COVID-19. But questions abound about the overall impact and our ability to recover. I say to you with utmost confidence that Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique will get through this. Government continues to embrace its role as leader, and we pray that through God's guidance, we'll make the right decisions, and you must also pray for us. We, therefore, welcome the confirmation of the National Day of Prayer being planned by the Conference of Churches and the Alliance of Evangelical Churches for May 17th. It is an opportunity for us to come together on bended knees and with humbled hearts to seek divine intervention as we navigate through this crisis. Furthermore, we eagerly anticipate the resumption of church services, and we await the conclusion of discussions with religious organizations and developing the requisite guidelines for this. Sisters and brothers, the status of our children continues to be a major priority. Regional protocols have been developed for education and are now being examined by local authorities to determine what is feasible for Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, and the timeline for returning to the classroom. Fellow Grenadians, we will emerge from this pandemic stronger, I'm convinced, and more resilient. We have faced serious challenges before, and I have no doubt that we'll also prevail in the face of this deadly crisis. I acknowledge the immense sacrifices being made by some, but there are others who simply sit back and criticize. I urge you, let us all strive to do better in this crucial period. Grenada's survival and recovery must be a collective effort. In unity, we all know there is strength. At this time, too, our thoughts and prayers are with those who have lost loved ones in the diaspora to this dreaded disease. Sisters and brothers all, in closing, I salute the mothers across the nation, particularly my own, who I am not able to interact with as usual. I extend greetings also to the men who play the dual role of mother and father. It has not been a typical Mother's Day, with many church services, luncheons, and other activities through which we traditionally celebrate you. But I hope that in some small way today, you have felt the love and appreciation of those around you. Happy Mother's Day to all of you. I thank you.
The preceding was an address to the nation by Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell.
I say, nah, man. Wood. Yo, this is the Dan man, Lindy, telling you to be COVID-19 safe. Stay home. That way we could play a mass sooner rather than later. Everything will come to pass. You know the tingo. Mass must play. How you mean?
Boom shakalaka, this is Ledneck from the West Point family, reminding all Grenadians to be COVID-19 smart. Stay home, it's just for a short time. We will be back on our feet soon, alright? Bless.
Protect yourself and our community from COVID-19. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 70% alcohol. Use a tissue when blowing your nose, sneezing, or coughing. Immediately discard the tissue properly and wash or sanitize your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Let's do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. To stay up to date, visit the Government of Grenada's webpage or the Ministry of Health's Facebook page. For more information, contact the Ministry of Health's hotline by calling 53-VIRUS. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by the Ministry of Health.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.